Ladies and gentlemen, please help me bring out Kim Walker.
So probably looking at me with the pink mohawk and all, you wouldn't think that I was a 17-year Army veteran. So I might not look like it on the outside, but I think all soldiers or all veterans can relate. I'm still a soldier on the inside. I still walk on the sidewalk and not on the grass. I pick up trash in my path, and I still say yes, sir, and ma'am. I enlisted in the Army at the age of 28. You must be wondering why in the heck would a 28-year-old woman enlist in the Army? And my story is really not that much different from other young men and women who decide to serve. I was raised in a broken home. I struggled with substance abuse for over a decade, and I was just a lost soul. I had no direction in life. So initially, I grew up in the northern suburbs of Chicago. Initially, I said, I'm gonna move to Phoenix, Arizona. I'm gonna move cross country, and I'm gonna start my life fresh there. So I packed up everything I owned, and I drove out to Phoenix, and guess who was there when I got there? Me. So for the next few months, I just continued on the self-destructive ways that I was living growing up in Chicago. So I'm thinking, I got to do something really drastic if I really want to make a change in my life. And I was sitting on the couch one night, and an Army recruitment commercial came on. It was back in 1998, so it was, do you remember the motto? Be all that you can be. And the soldiers on the television, they were crawling through the mud, they were climbing walls, and it just looked like so much fun. I'm like, I want to do that. So that week I went to the Army recruiting station, and I enlisted, and I shipped out to basic training 2 months later. My mother wasn't very happy, by the way. So I enlisted as a signal support system specialist, which is communications, which is one of the most important jobs in the Army, because in order to fight and win Americans' wars, soldiers need to communicate. So me and my team, we were the first ones in and the last one out, because when the first soldier's boots hit the ground, they need to communicate. And when that last leader steps off the battlefield, he needs to communicate. So yeah, I felt special. I had this job that was very important, and I was proud of it, and I was proud of my team. And I've deployed a few times. I've been to Afghanistan twice, Pakistan, Kuwait, and I've even done a tour in South Korea. One notable night, it was during my first deployment in Afghanistan on Bagram Air Base. I was walking back from dinner from the dining facility to the headquarters building, and I heard that sound. You know that sound. It was an incoming mortar round. And one of the things that the Army teaches you to do is how to react when incoming fire happens. So you hit the ground and you take cover, which I did. And after everything was clear and I could get back up, you better believe. Oh, by the way, I don't know if I mentioned this. I was carrying chocolate cake back to the headquarters because we just finished dinner. I totally messed up that line. But anyway, you better believe I still had that chocolate cake on the plate in my hand. I didn't win any medals for that or anything, but I was so proud of myself. So being a 28-year-old female, just coming in the Army, my peers are like 10 years younger than me. So they're young, they've got energy, they're strong, and I had to keep up with these people, and most of them were guys. So I physically trained as hard as I could all the time, and I had never really exercised before I joined the Army, but I found myself running 5Ks, 10Ks, half marathons, just so that I can keep up, like keep my head above water in order to train with these young men and women. And I was able to lead them that way, lead them properly. Physical fitness is really important in the Army. It kind of sets a tone of who you are. So I wanted to be that alpha female. and I was able to do that. My last deployment, 2012, Afghanistan again, in the city of Kabul. My body had already, it's been like 15 years I'm in the Army, and my body is breaking down after 15 years of lifting, carrying, climbing, ruck marching with boots and a 35-pound rucksack for 12 miles at a time. My body just gave out. I was lifting weights at the gym, and I herniated 4 discs in my neck. So they had to medevac me to Germany for an emergency spinal fusion, which didn't work out in the end. My spine was never fused, but I felt great. But when I saw the doctor later in 6 months, he's like, we have to do another surgery to properly fuse your spine. So after that, my body just wasn't the same. I was in chronic pain all the time. I couldn't run, I couldn't lift, I couldn't do push-ups, sit-ups. I couldn't train and with my team, I couldn't go to the field. I was non-deployable too. So I really wasn't any use to the Army anymore. When a soldier is broken, they're a liability. So I had to take a desk job. I had to lead from the desk. That is the last place a leader wants to be when they have soldiers out there. Because, I mean, the job of the Army is all about the soldiers. We just want to be with the soldiers. So I had this desk job, and I went into a deep depression. It was 2 years of a depression because the Army decided to medically retire me. So as I waited for the retirement papers, all the processing, I sat at this job, and one thing about a broken soldier, they get tasked with missions and assignments that nobody else wants to do. So I received my mission. His name was Specialist Robert Ellis. He was from Kennewick, Washington. He was 21 years old. He was deployed to Afghanistan in Bagram, sitting at a bus stop with 3 other young soldiers. They received incoming and direct fire. All 4 of them were killed. My assignment was to escort Robert home to his parents in Washington State from Dover Air Base in Delaware. Soldiers are the Army's property. We're like a piece of equipment. We got to have accountability as soldiers, just like we have to have accountability of our equipment. So I flew to Dover Air Force Base from Fort Carson, where I was stationed, and I had to sign for the body of Specialist Ellis. I had to sign for his personal belongings. I had to sign for his dog tags, and I had to sign for the medals that he had earned upon his death. The next morning, I went out to meet the honor guard on the tarmac, and they were there with a flag-draped casket, and honors were rendered, and they loaded him onto a small Cessna plane. And it was the pilot, myself, and Robert in that plane for an all-day flight from Delaware to Washington State. And I sat in front of Robert's casket was in the back of the plane, and I sat right directly in front of him. And I looked ahead straight for most of the time because it was hard to be in a plane with, you know, a body, a deceased soldier. And I just thought about my own issues of how I was so bitter about having to leave the Army and that they didn't like me anymore. You know, I wasn't part of the team. I broke and they're done with me. And I couldn't do that important job, that communications. You know, I was kind of like a superstar because everybody had to have their internet up, right? So we arrived in Washington, and as we were landing, I looked out the window, and I saw miles of people holding American flags, police cars, fire engines. And Kennewick is a small town, and they say that the small towns are where the biggest crowds come to accept their soldier coming home. That was the first teardrop that I actually cried for him at that moment. We deboarded the plane. The honor guard there was there to receive him, and they put his casket in the back of the hearse, and we all jumped in our vehicles and followed the hearse for Specialist Ellis's last convoy home. So we get to the funeral parlor, and there's a sergeant there that I have to transfer Robert's body and personal effects over to him. My mission was done. I could go home. I went to the back pew, and I sat down. And then Robert's family came in, and they walked up to the casket. And the Army trains you for a lot of things, but they don't train you is how to act or how to listen, respond to the sound of a mother grieving, seeing her son's dead body for the first time. I ended up staying a few more days, got to know the family, spent time with them, and Specialist Ellis's mother and I still keep in touch. And at the end of that time when I was there, and how I was just so anguished about how I couldn't do my job, the most important job that I had, that I realized that day that I actually was doing the most important job in the Army. Thank you.
Another round for Kim Walker, ladies and gentlemen.